Ladies and gentlemen, fight fans all around the world, let's talk some boxing. You're watching What You Need. Okay, so I'm about to do a video on clinching or tying up in boxing. This is a follow-up video to a video I did a while back talking about Floyd Mayweather Jr. versus Marcos McDonough and so on. But I realized there's a lot of people out here who are either new fans to the sport of boxing, or they are people who have been around boxing for a while, but apparently they haven't really understood certain things about the sport. So I want to talk a little bit about clinching and tying up. In front of you, you're seeing a number of videos with different boxers clinching, and there's so many different clinches. Lord, it would take forever to explain to you all the details about what boxers have learned in terms of clinching. But what I want to say first and foremost is that clinching is a part of boxing. Okay, it's not illegal at all. Okay, and I will show you this. I will show you all of this. Okay, not only is clinching and tying up a part of boxing, but it's been around since its inception. Okay, here you see two boxers and you see them clinching. If you've ever watched any old footage on any old fights in boxing, the clinch is a part of it. And you see two women. This is the early inceptions of women's boxing. This is back in the 1940s, but of course it was all the way back to the 1900s, early 1900s. We had women boxing. In fact, even before that, we had women boxing in these long dresses that they had and so on. But that's another story for another day. The point is that here you see a number of early boxers and early footage of early boxers clinching. And here they are showing you how to actually engage in a clinch or tying up. Okay, so it's been a part of boxing forever. You watch any old footage and you're going to see those two guys lock up. Okay, and they have different ways of doing it. You may see them more lock up like this. Okay, with their arms away from their body. Okay, but there are many different types of clinch. Now let me just make a differentiate between a clinch and tying up. Tying up is sort of like tangling up, or getting your opponent to get entangled in you. It's a dynamic effect. So you're not really holding on to them particularly, but you're sort of getting their hands are never free. So like for instance here, if this was a dynamic tangle up or tie up, Ricky Hatton would be loosely holding Floyd Mayweather's hands and they would be wriggling with one another. He'd pull Floyd Mayweather's head down. Floyd would pull his head from under Ricky Hatton's hand, and then Ricky Hatton would try and tie up one of his hands again, and they would kind of tangle up with one another. That's a dynamic thing. Whereas clinching is where you actually lock onto your opponent's hand, one hand or two hands or their head, and prevent them from actually using that hand for a duration of time. It's a short duration of time because the referee will see it, and he'll either say punch and get out, or he will say stop, break, and you better break. Because if you don't break, then you can get a warning, and then after that you can get penalized a point or immediately penalized a point. And there are many different types of holds, and the forearm is used. As you can see here, Shane Mosley is using the forearm against Vernon Forrest. But I want to show you that it's something that's taught. And how I know this? Because if you look at these three pictures, okay, even in the amateurs, you have the same sort of tie-up here, or clinch. And even here. All boxers learn it. Here you will see that Kell Brook is tied, he's clinched Sean Porter's hand. His head is to one side of Sean Porter's chest, and he keeps his guard to his head to prevent Sean Porter with his free hand from hitting him in his head. And he cannot hit him on the back or in the kidneys because those are illegal places to hit. So basically he has no place to hit Kell Brook. And if Kell Brook holds onto his hand indefinitely, then it's a clinch, and then the ref will say break, or he may say punch and get out, and when he says break, you better break. Okay, same thing with Vladimir Klitschko. See, identical move. So it's taught. Even in the amateurs, it's subtly taught. Here, this is actually a clinch, a short kind of tie-up clinch where the two boxers have actually tied up each other's hands. Notice his head is to the one side. Notice the other boxer, his guard is to one side. This is to prevent the opponent from hitting him. Okay, again you see it here with, this looks like Evander Holyfield with some other opponent. It may not be him, it may be the southpaw who George Foreman beat. Here Marcos McDonough is landing a body punch while his other hand is locked up. Here you see them. This guy has locked up this guy's hand. Okay, so it's a part of boxing. But it's not only a part of boxing, ladies and gentlemen. It's also a part of mixed martial arts. In fact, they not only tie you up with their hands, as you can see here, this is a wrestling move, but they also tie you up with their feet. Okay? So for those people who are saying boxing is dying and they're hugging too much and you need to go watch UFC, well, guess what, guys? UFC actually does it more than boxing. In fact, you have more ground action in the UFC than in boxing. Look, this guy here, he's tied up this guy's feet with his feet so that he can land punches on the guy's head. Okay? So it's actually more done in the UFC because wrestling is a part of, and judo is a part, and jiu-jitsu and so on is a part of the UFC. So of course you're going to have wrestling in there. Here you see two women and they lock each other up. This girl is holding her hand, but it could be considered a tie-up because she's not holding on to it very tightly. She has a guard here while the other opponent, her hand around the other lady's head, while the other lady has her hand inside. So this is called a tie-up, where it's dynamic. She could wriggle her hand out of there. She could get her hand under, she could slide under, and then she can throw some shots while this one could start tying her up again. Okay? Now, why I was talking about this is because a lot of people are talking about the Marquis of Queensberry rules. Marquis of Queensberry rules. And the Marquis of Queensberry rules explicitly states in the rules that there is to be no wrestling or hugging allowed. No wrestling or hugging or holding allowed. Okay? Now I want to explain something to you guys so you'll understand why the Marquis of Queensberry rules is applied that way. Wrestling occurs not only in a standing position but also on the floor or on the ground. Boxing is not wrestling. Takedowns in boxing don't happen. You can knock your opponent down, but you're not supposed to take them down. Similarly, in wrestling, you have a lot of floor action, as we saw in the UFC and so on. So when they say no wrestling, they're talking about all of that as well. No floor action. No locking up and just trying to push a guy around. Okay? You need to punch. It's called boxing. It's about punching. Pugilism. The other thing, no hugging allowed, has to do again with locking up and stopping the action. This is boxing. It is not holding. It is not hugging. Okay? Now once you're clear on that, then we go to modern rules. Because a lot of people like to talk about the Marquis of Queensberry rules, but actually modern boxing conforms to the Association of Boxing Commission's modern rules.